Jack "Rusty" Malone, a former Marine wrongfully convicted of murdering a fellow soldier during a controversial operation overseas, sits on death row with mere hours left to live. His only request before execution is to see Shadow, his loyal Rottweiler who has been visiting him throughout his 8-year imprisonment. During what should be a tender farewell in the sterile prison visiting room, Shadow suddenly ignores Rusty completely and instead displays aggressive behavior toward Marcus Hale, a government ally present to oversee the execution proceedings. Welcome to Mr. Bryan's Tale, where every story takes you on an unforgettable journey. Whether it's thrilling adventures, heartwarming moments, or tales that'll keep you on the edge of your seat, this is your destination for captivating storytelling. If you love getting lost in exciting narratives and discovering new worlds with every video, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss out on the next amazing tale. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Ward and Ellen Hargrove's heels clicked against the concrete floor of Blackstone Federal Penitentiary's death row, each step measured and deliberate. 15 years in corrections had taught her to compartmentalize, to view inmates as case numbers rather than people. But tonight felt different. Cell D-7 held Jack "Rusty" Malone, 42 years old, former Marine gunnery sergeant, convicted of murdering Corporal David Chun during a classified operation in Afghanistan. 3 hours until midnight. 3 hours until she would walk him to the execution chamber. She stopped outside his cell. Malone sat on his bunk, back straight despite 8 years behind bars, his buzzed hair showing streaks of gray. Tattoos covered his forearms. The eagle, globe, and anchor of the Marines prominent among them. His eyes, when they met hers, held no fear, only a quiet resignation that somehow felt worse. "Malone," she said, her voice echoing in the empty corridor, "I'm here for your final requests. You declined the last meal. Do you want to make any phone calls? See a chaplain?" He shook his head slowly, then spoke for the first time in weeks, his voice roughened by disuse. "I want to see Shadow." Hargrove's pen paused above her clipboard. "Your dog." "Yes, ma'am. He's all I got left." She'd seen Shadow during the monthly visits organized by Veterans Advocates United. The Rottweiler was getting old now, his muzzle gray, but his devotion to Malone never wavered. It was unusual, certainly, but she granted strange requests. "I'll arrange it," she said, surprising herself with the gentleness in her tone. "He'll be here within the hour." As she walked away, Hargrove couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something. Malone had maintained his innocence in the beginning, but they all did. Still, there was something in his eyes, not desperation, but certainty, as if he knew something no one else did. The visiting room had been cleared for this final meeting. Normally bustling with the tense conversations between inmates and their families, tonight it stood empty except for the necessary personnel. Ward and Hargrove had chosen this space instead of the usual glass partition booths. A small mercy for a man with hours to live. The room was sterile and institutional. White cinder block walls, fluorescent lights that hummed with electrical persistence, metal folding chairs arranged in a semicircle, and guards positioned at every exit point. Jack Malone was escorted in first, his wrists cuffed in front of him, chains rattling softly with each step. He'd been allowed to shower and change into a fresh green uniform. The 2 corrections officers guided him to a chair in the center of the room, then retreated to opposite corners, hands resting on their belts near their weapons. Standard protocol, even for a man scheduled to die in 2 hours and 40 minutes. Then Marcus Hale entered, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Hale was everything Malone was not: polished, powerful, untouchable. His charcoal gray suit was tailored to perfection, his dark hair slicked back, his shoes reflecting the overhead lights like mirrors. At 45, he'd built his reputation as a Department of Defense liaison, the man who handles sensitive situations with discretion and efficiency. He'd been present at Malone's trial, had testified about classified protocols and breaches of conduct. His testimony had been the nail in Malone's coffin. "Mr. Hale insisted on attending," Hargrove explained, noting the way Malone's jaw tightened. "As the DOD representative on your case, he has authorization to witness all proceedings." Hale smiled thinly, claiming a chair against the far wall. "Just ensuring protocol is followed, Warden." This has been a long journey to justice." Malone said nothing, but his hands clenched into fists. Justice. The word tasted like poison. The door opened again, and Officer Rodriguez entered with Shadow on a thick leather leash. The Rottweiler was 9 years old now, his black and tan coat still glossy despite his age, his powerful frame slightly diminished but still commanding. His dark eyes scanned the room with the intelligence that had made him an exceptional military working dog before his retirement. Malone's breath caught. "Shadow," he whispered, his voice breaking on the name. Rodriguez unclipped the leash as per Hargrove's instructions. This was mercy, allowing him these final moments without barriers. Shadow had never shown aggression during visits, had always been perfectly controlled. The dog stood motionless for a moment, his ears pricked forward, his head turning slowly to take in the room. Everyone expected him to run to Malone. The ex-Marine leaned forward in his chair, arms extended despite the cuffs, his eyes bright with unshed tears. This was what he'd asked for, not salvation, just as goodbye. 8 years of monthly visits, of Shadow's wet nose pressed against glass barriers, of paws scratching at partition windows. Now, finally, they could touch. But Shadow didn't move toward his handler. The Rottweiler's body went rigid, every muscle tensing beneath his coat. His head swiveled, locked onto something across the room. A low growl rumbled from deep in his chest, primitive and warning. His lips curled back, revealing white teeth, his hackles rising in a line down his spine. Malone froze. "Shadow." The dog ignored him completely. His attention was fixed, absolute and unwavering, on Marcus Hale. Hale shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his confident posture faltering. "Control your animal, Warden." But Shadow had already made his choice. Recognition burned in his eyes, not of a friend, but of an enemy. His growl deepened, echoing off the concrete walls, and the room suddenly felt very small. "Shadow, heel!" Malone commanded, his Marine training evident in the authority of his voice. But the dog might as well have been deaf. His entire focus remained locked on Hale with an intensity that made the air feel electric. Officer Rodriguez moved forward cautiously, hand extended. "Easy, boy. Easy there." Shadow's growl intensified, his body coiling like a spring. This wasn't the calm, well-trained dog that had visited Blackstone every month for 8 years. This was something primal, a military dog recognizing a threat, a loyal companion remembering something terrible. Warden Hargrove stepped closer, her instincts firing warning signals. In 15 years, she'd learned to read situations, to sense when something was wrong. "Mr. Hale, perhaps you should step outside." "I'm not going anywhere," Hale said, but his voice had lost its smooth confidence. He'd pressed himself back against the wall, his hands raised slightly in an unconscious defensive gesture. "That animal is dangerous." This was a mistake, Warden. Malone watched the scene unfold with growing comprehension. His eyes moved between Shadow and Hale, connections forming in his mind. "You," he breathed. "Shadow knows you. Don't be ridiculous." Hale snapped. "I've never seen this dog before tonight." But Shadow told a different story. The Rottweiler's memory was long and specific, trained through years of military service to identify threats and remember enemies. His body language screamed recognition, not uncertainty, not random aggression, but absolute certainty. This man was dangerous. This man had hurt someone. Malone's hands gripped the edges of his chair. He was there that night. "Shadow was with me the night Chin died." His voice grew stronger, years of suppressed truth rising to the surface. "We heard someone in the compound. Shadow went after them. He bit someone, bit them bad. I heard the scream. But by the time I got there, Chin was already dying, and Shadow was gone, chasing whoever ran." Shadow lunged. The Rottweiler moved with the speed and precision of his military training, covering the distance to Hale in 3 powerful bounds. Guards shouted, reaching for their weapons, but the dog was already airborne. 90 pounds of muscle and fury collided with Hale, knocking him from his chair onto the concrete floor. "Don't shoot," Hargrove commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Do not discharge weapons in here." Shadow had Hale's right arm clamped in his jaws, not the wild mauling of a vicious attack, but the controlled takedown of a trained military dog securing a target. Hale screamed, trying to wrench his arm free, and in the struggle, his suit jacket sleeve tore completely away. Officers Rodriguez and Chin rushed forward, grabbing Shadow's collar and pulling with all their strength. The dog released his grip reluctantly, still snarling, fighting against their hold as they dragged him back toward the door. But the damage was done not to Hale, but to his carefully maintained secret. His right forearm lay exposed. The suit jacket and dress shirt had been torn away, revealing skin marked by deep, unmistakable scars. Not fresh wounds, but old ones, jagged, twisted tissue that spoke of a serious dog bite. The pattern was distinctive, for puncture marks from canine teeth, surrounded by tearing trauma where flesh had been gripped and shaken. The scarring was extensive, covering the outer forearm from wrist to elbow. Medical records, Malone said quietly, his voice cutting through the commotion. Check his medical records from 8 years ago. October 15th, the night Chin died. Hale clutched his arm, his face pale, his eyes wide with something that looked like panic. This is absurd. I injured my arm in a car accident. This proves nothing. But Warden Hargrove was already pulling out her radio. Get me medical records for Marcus Hale. Priority 1. I want everything from 8 years ago. 20 minutes later, Hargrove stood in her office, reading through documents that had been pulled from archived medical files and cross-referenced with civilian hospital records. Marcus Hale sat in a chair across from her desk, flanked by 2 guards, his expensive suit jacket draped over his scarred arm like a shield of shame. Malone waited in an adjacent holding room. Shadow secured in the facility's K-9 unit, still agitated. October 16th, 8 years ago, Hargrove read aloud. George Washington University Hospital, emergency room. Patient, Marcus Hale. Treatment for severe dog bite trauma to right forearm. Required 48 stitches, antibiotics, and rabies protocol. She looked up, her eyes hard. That's not a car accident, Mr. Hale. That's the day after Corporal Chen's murder. Hale's jaw tightened. I was attacked by a stray dog in Bethesda. It has nothing to do with this case. The medical report describes a bite pattern as consistent with a large working breed, possibly Rottweiler or Belgian Malinois. Defensive wounds, suggesting the patient was engaged in physical activity when attacked. Hargrove set the documents down. You told the ER, doctor, you were out jogging. But the blood work they ran that night showed elevated adrenaline and cortisol, levels consistent with extreme stress or violent confrontation. Warden, you're overreaching. You also told the doctor you killed the dog that attacked you. Self-defense. But no dead dog was ever reported in Bethesda that week. Hargrove leaned forward. You know what I think? I think Shadow bit you on a military compound in Afghanistan. I think Corporal Chun discovered something he wasn't supposed to see, and you killed him for it. I think Malone walked in right after, and you framed him perfectly. Hale stood abruptly. I don't have to listen to this conspiracy theory. I'm leaving. No, Hargrove said coldly. You're not. Guards detained Mr. Hale. I'm calling the FBI. The investigation moved with swift brutality once federal agents arrived. Special Agent Victoria Chun, no relation to the murdered corporal, but driven by the coincidence nonetheless, obtained a warrant for Marcus Hale's vehicle within 90 minutes. His Mercedes SUV sat in the prison's visitor parking lot, black and pristine under the harsh security lights. Shadow, still on high alert, was brought out by a professional K-9 handler from the prison's contraband detection unit. The Rottweiler pulled toward the Mercedes immediately, pawing at the rear hatch, whining with agitation. His behavior was textbook indication. He detected something significant. Open it, Agent Chin ordered. The hatch lifted, revealing an immaculate interior. Black leather, cargo organizer, emergency kit. Nothing suspicious to the naked eye. But Shadow wouldn't relent, his nose working overtime, pushing past the surface-level organization to something beneath. Officers removed the cargo floor panel. Underneath, in the spare tire well, lay a black tactical bag. Agent Chin pulled it out, unzipped it carefully. Inside were items that made everyone present fall silent. Classified military documents marked with red stamps, hard drives labeled with operation code names, and most damning, a combat knife with 7-inch blade, still stained with dried blood despite attempts to clean it. "That's Chen's knife," Malone said from where he stood between two guards, his voice thick with emotion. "It was missing from his body. They told me it was never recovered from the scene. Agent Chen bagged the evidence with methodical precision. We'll run DNA on the blood. Cross-reference the documents. But Mr. Hale, I think you know what we're going to find." Hale stood frozen, his carefully constructed world collapsing around him. His eyes darted to his vehicle, to the evidence, to the dog that had remembered him across 8 years and finally found justice. In Warden Hargrove's office, now converted into a makeshift interrogation room, Marcus Hale sat across from Special Agent Victoria Chen. His lawyer was en route, but Hale had waived his right to wait. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he knew the evidence was insurmountable. Or maybe, after 8 years of carrying the weight of murder, he simply wanted it finished. "Corporal Chen discovered the weapons transfers," Hale began, his voice hollow. "I was facilitating illegal arms sales to private contractors, skimming millions off Department of Defense shipments. Chen was thorough, too thorough. He found the discrepancies in manifests, started asking questions to the wrong people." Agent Chen's pen moved across her notepad. "So you killed him?" "I confronted him that night in the compound. Tried to convince him to let it go, to take a cut and stay quiet. He refused, said he was reporting everything to his commanding officer." Hale's hands trembled slightly. "We fought. I had the knife. His knife. Took it from his gear locker earlier. Self-defense, I told myself. But it wasn't. I stabbed him. Multiple times. And Malone came running when he heard the struggle. His dog, that damn dog, chased me, caught my arm, tore it to shreds before I could get away. I barely made it to my vehicle, drove myself to a D.C. hospital where no one would ask questions." Hale's voice grew bitter. "Malone never saw my face. It was dark, chaotic, easy to plant evidence, to modify reports, to ensure he took the fall. Who's going to believe an enlisted Marine over a DOD liaison?" Hargrove, watching from the corner of the room, felt sick. 8 years. Malone spent 8 years on death row for your crime. "I know." Hale's head dropped into his hands. "God help me, I know." Dawn broke over Blackstone Federal Penitentiary in shades of gold and rose, painting the concrete walls with colors they'd never seen before. Jack Malone stood in the processing center, dressed in civilian clothes for the first time in 8 years. Jeans, a white T-shirt, a Marine Corps ball cap someone had brought him. His execution had been stayed at 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes before he was scheduled to die. By 3 a.m., the governor had issued a full pardon based on the overwhelming evidence of his innocence and Hale's confession. Now, at 6:30 a.m., he was walking out the front gates a free man. Shadow waited in the parking lot, tail wagging with such force his whole body swayed. When he saw Malone, the Rottweiler barked once, sharp, joyful, victorious, and bounded forward. They met in the middle of the asphalt, man dropping to his knees, dog jumping into his arms. 8 years of glass barriers, of monthly visits cut short by time limits, of separation that felt like torture, all of it dissolved in that embrace. "Good boy," Malone whispered into Shadow's fur, tears streaming down his face. "You saved me, boy. You saved me." Warden Hargrove watched from the prison entrance, a rare smile on her weathered face. Agent Chen stood beside her, holding documents that would rebuild Malone's life. Military pension restoration, financial compensation, a formal apology from the Department of Defense. But Malone wasn't thinking about any of that. He had one destination in mind, one promise to keep. With Shadow beside him, he would visit David Chen's grave in Arlington National Cemetery. He would tell his fallen brother's family the truth, would honor the memory of a soldier who died trying to do the right thing. Justice had come late, but it had come. And loyalty, the fierce, unbreakable loyalty of a Rottweiler, had made all the difference. Jack Malone's story is a powerful reminder that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of surfacing when we least expect it. Shadow didn't just save his handler's life. He restored faith in a system that had failed, proved that loyalty transcends time and circumstance, and showed us that sometimes justice needs a four-legged hero to prevail. 8 years stolen can never be returned, but Malone walked free with his head held high, his honor restored, and his faithful companion by his side. Marcus Hale faced federal charges for murder, conspiracy, and corruption, crimes that would ensure he'd spend the rest of his life behind the very bars that had wrongly held Malone. And Shadow? He became a living legend, the dog who solved a murder and saved an innocent man from death row. What did you think of this incredible story? Would you trust a dog's instinct over human testimony? Have you ever witnessed an animal display this kind of loyalty and intelligence? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear about your own experiences with loyal pets or your take on this remarkable case. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this post and subscribe to Mr. Brian's Tale for more incredible true stories of justice, loyalty, and the unbreakable bonds between humans and animals. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another thrilling tale. Speech balloon question for you. If you were facing your final hours and could make one last request, what would it be? Share in the comments. I read every single one. Coming up next on Mr. Brian's Tale, more stories that will restore your faith in humanity, challenge your perspective, and remind you that heroes come in all forms, sometimes with a pause and a wagging tail. Thank you for being part of this journey. Your support means everything. Until next time, remember, loyalty never forgets, and the truth always finds a way. Mr. Brian's Tale Paw Prints.